The first thing I noticed was not the snow tapping against her apartment window or the smell of something burning on the stove. It was my name on her phone screen. Except it wasn't my name, it said backup plan. Just kidding. For about 3 full seconds I stood there with her phone in my hand and genuinely forgot how to form a sentence. 2 minutes before that, everything had been completely normal. It was a Saturday in February, the kind where the whole city feels like it's moving slower than usual, where the sidewalks outside her building were salted and gray, and her apartment smelled like butter and garlic and whatever optimism she had brought into this attempt at homemade risotto. Lee was standing at the stove in her university hoodie, the green one from Dalhousie that had a small bleach stain near the pocket. She had been meaning to throw out for 4 years. Her hair was in one of those buns that looked accidental, but probably took effort. She had a wooden spoon in her hand, and she was stirring like the pot had personally offended her. "I don't need your input," she said before I had even spoken. "I haven't said anything. You walked in like you had a concern. I was just coming to get water. You came in here to judge the risotto." "The risotto," I said looking at the pot, "is not giving me confidence." She pointed the spoon at me. There was risotto on the tip of it. "You are here to be supportive." "I'm very supportively concerned." She made a noise that meant she was trying not to laugh. I got a glass from her cabinet, 3rd shelf, left side, because I had known where her glasses lived for 6 years, and filled it from the tap. Her little radio on the counter was playing something low and acoustic. The radiator in the corner was doing that thing where it clicks every few minutes. Outside, a snowplow was going by on Saint Laurent. That was us. That had been us since we were both 23, and working the same summer contract for a land surveying company in Halifax. The kind of job that sounds more interesting than it is, and involves a lot of standing in fields, holding equipment while someone else argues about property lines. Lee had driven us home after the first week and informed me that my music taste was criminally safe and made me play DJ, while she critiqued every choice in real time. By the end of that summer, I was the person she texted when her landlord pulled something, and she was the person I called when I didn't know if I should take the job offer in Toronto. I took it. She moved to Montreal 6 months later for grad school and then just stayed. I ended up in Montreal too, 18 months after that, which honestly had nothing to do with her at the time. That's what I told myself. That's what I told everyone. For 6 years we had been the kind of close that other people found confusing. We split grocery runs when we both needed olive oil. We showed up to each other's family things without needing to be asked. I knew she took her coffee black in the morning, and with too much oat milk in the afternoon. Like the consistency didn't matter, once she'd already had the real thing. She knew I reread the ending of bad movies and complained about them for the rest of the week. She stole from my plate at every restaurant we'd ever been to. I once moved her entire bookshelf 3 inches to the left, because the asymmetry was bothering me, and didn't tell her until she noticed on her own, 2 weeks later. My brother Callum had asked us at Christmas, directly, whether we were going to do anything about whatever we were. I had said there was nothing to do anything about. Lee had been in the kitchen at the time. When she came back in, she looked at me and I looked at her and I said, "Callum's being dramatic," and she said, "He really is," and we moved on. Later that night, driving home, she was quiet in a way that I noticed but filed away under nothing. Her phone buzzed on the counter while she was fighting the risotto. "Can you check that?" she said, not looking up. "If it's my mom, just tell me the topic so I can mentally prepare." That was normal. We knew each other's phone passcodes because we'd both helped the other find their phone too many times. I picked it up without thinking about it. The screen had a message preview from someone named Tyler, who I knew was her coworker. But under the preview, in the space where my contact name should have been, from the text I'd sent her an hour earlier asking if she needed me to bring anything, was the name, Backup Plan. Just kidding. The radio kept playing. The radiator clicked. The risotto made a sound like it was trying to get my attention. "Is it her?" Lee asked. I didn't answer right away. She looked over her shoulder. Something in my face must have already changed because she stopped stirring. "What?" she said. I held up the phone slightly, not accusatory. I don't even know what expression I had. She looked at the screen, then she looked at me, and I watched the exact moment she realized what I had seen. Lee crossed the kitchen in about 4 steps and took the phone from my hand in one clean motion, locked it and set it face down on the counter. Then she stood there with her palm on top of it, staring at the tile backsplash like she was counting the grout. I leaned against the counter across from her and waited. "That's not what it sounds like," she said. "I haven't said what I think it sounds like. You're thinking something." "I'm thinking several things." She turned around, her arms crossed over her chest, but it looked more like she was holding something in than keeping me out. It was a joke, like a private joke. With myself, which I realize sounds unhinged. A private joke, Yes, that you saved to your contacts. She winced. When you say it like that, how would you like me to say it? I'd like you to not say it at all for about 30 seconds while I collect myself. I looked at the stove. The risotto was doing something new and ominous. Your risotto. She turned, grabbed the spoon, stirred something, made a face and turned the heat down. Then she stood there with her back to me for a moment. I could see her shoulders rise and fall once. I changed it after the thing at Remy's birthday, she said, still facing the stove. Remy was a mutual friend. His birthday last August had been one of those rooftop things in the plateau that starts at 6 and somehow ends at 2 in the morning. I tried to remember what had happened. It had been a good night. Hot in that way that Montreal summers get where you just stop fighting it. Remy's birthday, I said. Yeah. She turned around and leaned back against the stove. Not looking at me, but not looking away either. You remember when his sound system cut out and everyone was annoyed and you climbed up to wherever it was plugged in and fixed it in like 4 minutes, without making it a thing. It was a loose cable. And then his friend Marissa spilled her drink on herself and you gave her your flannel shirt, without her even having to ask. And you found Remy's keys. And you talked to his dad for like 20 minutes because his dad didn't know anyone and you could tell he was uncomfortable. His dad was interesting. He used to work on the railway in Sudbury. Leigh looked at me. That's exactly what I mean. I didn't know what to say to that. I was standing by the railing, she said, watching you talk to Remy's dad, and I had this thought. She stopped, pressed her lips together. And then later when we were walking to the metro and it was late and that guy outside the dep was being weird, you just kind of stepped between us without making a big deal of it. Just moved. Like it was obvious. It was obvious, I know. She looked down. That was sort of the problem. The radio changed something with a piano. The snow had picked up outside. I could tell by the way the light through the window had gone slightly blue-gray the way it does in Montreal, when the flakes are heavy. So I went home, she said, and I was sitting on my bed with my shoes still on because I was tired and I was thinking about the night. And you texted me to make sure I'd gotten home okay. One message, nothing dramatic. Just, you know how you do that. I did know. I always texted when she took the metro late, and your name came up on the screen, she said. And I thought, backup plan, just kidding. The kitchen felt smaller. The just kidding was the joke part, she said quickly. Like, the joke was that it wasn't actually a backup plan, it was just. The thought was there and it was embarrassing, so I made it a joke, and then I made it the contact name because I thought it would make me laugh every time you texted. Did it? She was quiet for a second. At first, and then I just started smiling every time your name came up, even when the text was something dumb like should I get the large or the small poutine? That was an important question. You always get the large. I do always get the large. She looked at me. There was something tired in her expression, but not the bad kind of tired. The kind where you've been carrying something for a while, and you're not sure if setting it down is a relief or a risk. I kept meaning to change it back, she said. After a week, then after the holidays. Then I stopped thinking of it as something I needed to fix and more like. She stopped. Like what? She shrugged, but it wasn't a casual shrug. It was the kind she did when something mattered more than she wanted it to. Like the most honest thing in my phone. I stood very still for a moment. The risotto made a sound. Neither of us looked at it. I had known Leigh for 6 years. I had seen her in every state a person can be in. I had seen her defend a parking dispute in French with someone who started it in English, and she had won. I had seen her cry exactly twice, once at a documentary about sled dogs and once when her cat died, and she cried like she was angry about it. I had seen her charming and sharp and generous and completely insufferable. But I had not seen her look like this. Open, a little scared, like she had walked into a room she meant to leave quickly, and then the door closed behind her. The risotto, I said, because I needed a second. She turned around, looked at it, turned the heat down further, and turned back. It's fine, it doesn't look fine, it's going through something. Let it figure itself out. I moved away from the counter, not toward her, just slightly less stationary. I wasn't sure what I was doing yet. That's the honest part. I knew what I felt. I had known something about what I felt for longer than I had let myself call it that. But I was standing in her kitchen on a Saturday in February, working out how to be honest without being careless. I had made a habit of being careful with Leigh. Not because she was fragile. She was the opposite of fragile. But because she mattered more than most things. And that made the distance between saying something true and saying something right feel very wide. I'm going to tell you something, I said. She looked at me warily. Okay, the contact name you have for me. The one you said is the most honest thing in your phone. Yeah, I think mine might be catching up. She blinked. What does that mean? It means I've been calling you my best friend because that word is easy. Because everyone understands it. Because it doesn't require me to. I stopped. Tried again. Because friendship is safe in a way that the other thing isn't, and I've been standing behind that word for a while. Lei didn't move. I am aware, I said, that I am telling you this in your kitchen while your risotto has possibly given up, and that this is not a romantic setting, and that I have no plan. You never have a plan, that's true. But I usually manage. You do usually manage. Her voice was quieter than before. I'm telling you because you were honest and you didn't mean to be, and the honest thing deserves an honest thing back. Not a polite version. Not the version where I say that's really sweet and we both agree it doesn't change anything. Okay, she said. And then, what does it change? That was the question. The risotto was beyond saving, probably. The snow outside was coming down steady. My jacket was over the back of her chair, which was where it always ended up when I came over, because she only had one hook by the door and she always got there first. I don't know exactly, I said. But I'm done pretending the backup plan is a joke, from either of us. She looked at me for a long moment. The kind of look she got when she was reading something and deciding if she trusted the narrator. Then she laughed, just once short surprised. That's a terrible line. I know, you literally just called yourself someone's backup plan. I was working with the material. That's the material you chose. I was nervous. She went quiet again, but something in her face had loosened. She reached up and tucked a piece of hair behind her ear, which she only did when she was trying to look more composed than she felt, and I knew that because I had been paying attention for 6 years without letting myself understand why. I changed it after Remy's birthday, she said again, softer this time. And I thought about changing it back every single day. And I didn't. Because every time I picked up my phone I saw it and it felt like the truest thing I had, even if it was embarrassing. Even if the just kidding was doing a lot of work. She paused. The just kidding was doing all the work. I know, okay. She looked down at her kitchen floor. So what are you saying, exactly? I took a step closer to her. Not dramatic, just across the kitchen. I'm saying that I fix your cabinet hinges, and I know which side of the bed you sleep on, and I drove 4 hours to Trois-Rivières, because you had to cover a conference, and your car was in the shop, and I told you it was because I had nothing else going on that weekend. You did have nothing going on. I had a hockey game. She looked up. You gave up a hockey game? I gave up a hockey game. She stared at me. You love hockey, I'm aware. You once watched a game on your phone during my cousin's graduation dinner. That was a playoff game. Different rules. The point is, I took another step. We were close now. Close enough that I could see the flower she had gotten on her sleeve earlier that she hadn't noticed yet. The point is, I've been showing up in every way except the one that required me to say it out loud. And I'm saying it out loud. Lei put her hand flat on the counter beside her, her fingers pressed against the tile. This is a lot to process while the risotto is dying. I know, I'm sorry about the timing. You're not sorry. Not really, she let out a long breath. Then she looked at me, really looked. Not in the way she looked when she was checking if I was fine or when she was deciding if a joke had landed. The other kind. The backup plan thing was a joke, she said. And then it wasn't. Yeah, same for me. She said it simply. Just like that. No speech, no disclaimer. Just the same for me in the same voice she used when she told me important things she had decided were worth saying. I reached over and took her hand off the counter. She let me. Her fingers were cold from the glass she'd been holding earlier. The risotto, she said, not moving. I know. We should probably deal with that, probably. Neither of us moved. I leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't a movie kiss. There was no soundtrack swell. The radiator clicked. The radio was still playing. It was just quiet and warm. And it tasted slightly like the wine she'd been sipping while she cooked. And when I pulled back, she had her eyes closed for a second longer than necessary. She opened them and said, okay. I said, okay. That was, yeah, okay. She nodded once, like she was confirming something to herself. Then she turned around, looked at the stove, and made a sound of complete defeat. The risotto is cooked to the pan. I know, I spent 45 minutes on that. I know, we're getting poutine. I was going to suggest that. She turned off the stove. She washed her hands. She grabbed her coat from the hook by the door and held mine out to me and said, large, obviously, and I said, obviously, and we went out into the snow. The place we went was the kind of Montreal spot that has 12 tables and a handwritten menu and stays open late because the neighborhood expects it to. We sat in the window with the snow coming down outside, and ate poutine from the large containers, which was the right call, and we talked for 3 hours about nothing in particular, and everything adjacent to what had happened, and every once in a while one of us would look at the other, and the look was different than it had been that morning. Not unrecognizable, just new in a way that felt less like a door opening, and more like a room we had both been standing in for a while, finally with the lights on. Walking home, she took my arm near the corner of Montreal, not dramatically, just slipped her hand through, and kept walking like it was something we'd always done. It wasn't. But it felt like something we'd been working toward for long enough that it might as well have been. 2 weeks later, I was at her place on a Sunday. She was grading papers at the kitchen table, and I was reading on the couch with my feet up because she had stopped complaining about that years ago. Her phone was on the table beside her coffee. It lit up when I texted her something stupid about a jacket she'd left at my place. She glanced at the screen, then looked at me over her laptop. You looked. I had. The contact name was still there. Backup plan. Just kidding. You haven't changed it, I said. I'm thinking about it. You've been thinking about it for 6 months. These things take time. She went back to her papers. Do you want me to change it? I thought about it. No, she smiled at her laptop. Didn't think so. The snow was lighter that week. March was trying to start being reasonable, the way it sometimes does in Montreal before it changes its mind again. She had a mug of tea that had gone cold at her elbow. I had her spare key on my key ring, had since October, which she had given me in a completely offhand way. The way she did things she had thought about carefully. The contact name stayed. A few weeks later I stopped noticing it as something strange. It was just her telling the truth in the only way she could manage for a while, until the other way became possible. Which, in the end, is not the worst place to start.